Cutting Edge series hits a major milestone today. Since late November, Turbo has dominated the speed charts, but the release of Zimage Base changes the conversation entirely. The ComfyUI team just dropped the official templates, and the Zimage repository is finally live with the non-distilled weights. We are moving away from the 8-step lightning rounds and back into high-fidelity territory. This is your first look at Zimage Base versus Zimage Turbo. To keep this test clinical, I have updated ComfyUI to the latest build and pulled the official templates for both models. The architecture is similar, but the execution is worlds apart. Turbo runs at 8 steps with a 1.0 CFG, while Base demands 30 steps at a 4.0 CFG. I have merged both into a single master workflow to see how they handle the exact same seeds and prompts. Before we jump into the full prompt stress test, I want to show you exactly how these models scale across different step counts using the same seed. Our prompt is a hyper-realistic cinematic portrait of a woman in a black corset dress against a concrete wall, featuring complex hand positioning and dramatic Rembrandt lighting. At 8 steps, Turbo is already impressive, and pay close attention to how well Turbo handles the hands right out of the gate. Base, on the other hand, is blurry with a lot of artifacts at this level, which is totally expected since it isn't a distilled model. At 20 steps, Turbo doesn't change much in terms of composition, but the skin textures start to degrade. Some of you might find this extra grit more realistic, but I find it a bit overprocessed. Meanwhile, Base is starting to take shape, though the fingers are looking a little weird at this stage. By 30 steps, Turbo degrades even further, while the overall image remains virtually identical to the lower step counts. Base is still struggling with those fingers. At 40 steps, Turbo is stagnant. Base finally delivers an okay finger and fingernail, but looking at this specific portrait, you might wonder why we even bother with the extra wait time. So, why bother? If you have used Turbo extensively, you know that diversity is its biggest weakness. The characters and compositions start to look very similar even when you swap seeds. As we are about to see in our head-to-head battle, Base excels at prompt adherence and creative diversity. Those two factors alone are a massive argument for wading through those extra steps. Now for prompt comparison. To automate this, I am using the iTools prompt loader. This allows me to feed a text file with 10 distinct prompts and iterate through them one by one. I have also added the KJ nodes timer so we can quantify the performance gap. Running at a standard 1024 by 1024 resolution, our first generation shows the raw math of the models. Base clocks in at 42 seconds, while Turbo finishes in just 12 seconds. This 3-to-1 ratio is exactly what you would expect given the step count. In our first prompt featuring a mahogany-haired alchemist and a chalkboard with the text transmutation alpha, both models nail the typography. Zimage is becoming famous for its text rendering, and this proves why. However, Base interprets the character's posture better, leaning her further over the desk as requested. Turbo opts for a safer, more upright composition. Moving to the second prompt, we test a futuristic bar scene with the neon text "Last Stop 2099. Base takes 44 seconds while Turbo finishes in 11 seconds. Both models keep the text sharp, which is a huge selling point, but look at the holographic cocktail and the micro-mechanical details. Base captures the translucent, ethereal nature of the drink and the complexity of the jacket. Turbo struggles here, delivering a more grounded, realistic drink that ignores the holographic prompt and lacks the finer mechanical textures. At this point, the speed difference is established, so we can focus purely on prompt adherence. Prompt 3 is a zero-gravity scene with floating books and the text "Forbidden Knowledge." Here, the difference is night and day. Turbo leans heavily into a realistic, almost stock photo aesthetic. It fails to render the text because it is too small. Base, however, handles the starlight skin texture and the silver hair perfectly, and the text at the ancient tome is small but legible. Prompt 4 is a macro shot of a mechanical dragonfly. This is a technical stress test for the serial number Unitex 7 Zimage. Turbo looks great in a vacuum, but next to Base, you see the lack of adherence. Base puts us in a clear forest background as requested, whereas Turbo goes for a generic bokeh blur. The gears and pistons are also far more defined in the Base model. On Prompt 5, our seductive queen in heavy crimson velvet, we see a massive divergence in narrative intent. Both models handle the dramatic, high-contrast lighting well, but Base feels more deliberate with its shadows and textures. Most importantly, look at the eye contact. The queen is correctly looking down at the chessboard with Base, creating a sense of focus and mystery. Turbo has her staring directly at the viewer, which breaks the immersion of the scene. By prompt 6, the gap widens again. We asked for a digital holographic rose. Base gives us a purely holographic object, while Turbo produces a hybrid that looks too physical. This is the recurring theme. If you only saw Turbo, you would be impressed, but Base shows you what you are actually missing. The conclusion is clear. Zimage Base is the new standard for professional workflows where prompt adherence and technical detail outweigh the need for a 10-second generation. It wins on texture, it wins on spatial awareness, and it wins on creative diversity. You can find this combined comparison workflow on the Discord. Grab the JSON, load your own prompts, and comment below what you think. And that's the node, all open source, no filler. Thank you for watching. Grab the file, keep creating.